Thanks everybody for hopping on. I'm excited to speak with Casey and Katherine this week. Of how to really maximize your paid social campaigns in 2022. We all work very closely together, even though we're on different sides of the business. And I'm looking forward to chatting with these lovely ladies. So let me see if I can get things going there. So I'm Kyle. I am our Executive Vice President of Services at Hawke Media. Katherine and Casey, do you want to introduce yourselves as well?
Sure, I'll start. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Katherine LaViscount, and I am a partner manager over here at Meta. And I have the pleasure of partnering with Hawke as one of my agencies that I work with on a regular basis. So at Meta, I partner with advertising agencies to help them up-level their business results for clients and overall agency strategy. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Casey to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Casey Daly. I'm the Senior Director of Lifecycle Marketing at the Sill. I oversee all of our paid digital advertising as well as our retention programs here, and also have the pleasure of working with Hawke. They're our agency who run all of our digital marketing programs, including paid social. So I'm really excited to talk with everyone today about some of our successes.
Yeah, I thought we could just do a quick intro of where we work, just so that everyone knows a little bit more about us before we dive in. So I'll make mine quick and painless here, but I do work at Hawke. I oversee all services at Hawke currently. The great thing about Hawke is we do have a lot of transparency in the way that we work together. We have month-to-month contracts, which is a very different, unique proposition than other agencies out there. We do really hire top talent and really do use a data-driven approach when in the media buying space. And also we do have a la carte services. So we do have, any media buying, any life cycle marketing, SMS, you don't have to sign up with everything. We do have an a la carte business model, which is great. And we've worked with over $100 million of ad spend in the space across all channels at Hawke, which is really nice. Then just a quick touch of our services at Hawke, just so that everyone knows. We go everything from strategy to branding, creative, web design, lifecycle, email, SMS marketing, affiliate, photo, video, Amazon and Walmart. We do Walmart buying services, as well as media buying across all social search platforms, programmatic display. And then we do a lot of content, photo, video, and creative on the social side as well, specifically knowing that that's where things are moving towards, is that content and photo stopping pieces. I will go ahead and pass it over to Katherine.
Yes, so y'all may have heard of us before. We're a really small little tech company, the artist formerly known as Facebook. So we recently renamed and reestablished our mission as a company back in October of 2021. And really with the focus of joining all of our apps and technologies under one brand. And our goal is in the future is to bring the metaverse to life and to help people connect, find communities, and grow their businesses. Our mission overall is to just bring people closer together. And we believe that being Meta and focusing on the metaverse is going to help people do that in ways like never before. So that's kind of the future of our company. Obviously, we still have all of our apps and services like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Oculus, just to name a few. So if you haven't heard of us, it's nice to meet y'all. And I'll pass that over to Casey.
Hi, everyone. I work at the Sill, as I mentioned before, and the Sill is really founded on the premise that we believe that plants make people happy. And we are a direct-to-consumer plant delivery company. We have a robust e-commerce business. We also have brick-and-mortar stores across many major cities in the U.S., including New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Boston, and Chicago. We ship basically healthy, happy plants right to your door. We have a 30-day customer guarantee and really have a ton of resources on plant care and resources and access to plant experts to help you throughout the Planned Parenthood journey. And that's a little about the Sill.
Perfect. Well, we all three of us work very closely together on this call. So I think the great thing is we have a brand, we have an agency, and we also have a platform or multiple platforms. I guess the best way to say that. So we all have different ways of looking at the business and different parts of the digital ecosystem that we play. So I really wanted to put together some great just conversation topics for us to take a look at from each of our sides of the business and how it impacted or changed or how we view things differently. Coming from a singular brand versus an agency where you work on multiple brands versus, a platform where you're always coming with new cool ideas and new innovative experiences. We all have a different part of this business that we play and lean on each other to support one another in these relationships. So I can just go ahead and start kind of looking at some sort of 2022 look back from holiday, looking at it from a brand side, from a platform side, and from an agency side. One thing at Hawke that we really saw was, I think this isn't a shock to anybody, is the rise in costs, especially since iOS 14 and just the change in the space. So, what we really saw was that CPM increase about 123% on average year over year with a lot of brands and specifically on Facebook and Instagram and across the audience network and everywhere, as well as increasing the customer acquisition cost, your CAC. I can use acronyms too. But increasing that customer acquisition cost significantly on the platform, which means that you really had to change your strategy, move into things like broad audience. You really had to move across the entire network, not only beyond feeds. You really had to get, I like to call at Hawke, we call it thumb stopping content because you're scrolling on your thumb. So really get that creative that is a thumb stopper that makes you, the consumer, really click on it and move forward. Other things we saw is, we didn't really shift our spend too much between platforms year over year, given we do know that Facebook and the Facebook platforms specifically always perform well. It's just looking at other metrics. So rather than looking at that return in a 7-day window after iOS 14, looking at things like the lifetime value of a consumer, looking at that customer acquisition cost and really framing it differently to really give a holistic experience for a brand. So that's a big piece of the holiday look back that we saw was the cost of the CPM and CPC increase. The cost per link click after iOS 14, looking at all of Hawke's clients, increased about 68% since that timeframe. But again, much shorter window and having to adapt during the holiday time to get as many new consumers in the pipeline. I'd be curious, Katherine, kind of your thoughts there and like what you saw specifically on your side too.
Yeah, so I will say we saw the same things that you saw when it came to cost increases. And that really was due to the challenges of iOS. When we lose signals that power all of this personalized advertising, it is going to impact the way we can deliver ads effectively to consumers. One thing that was interesting is that holiday spend did grow year over year. It grew about 14% across the platform. But what's interesting is that on mega sales days, so think Black Friday, Cyber Monday, we actually saw a slight decline. And so what we actually found was that people were extending that shopping holiday preparatory timeframe, where a lot of that spend was actually front loaded. Whether it was to avoid supply chain disruptions or shipping delays, like people really were thinking ahead last year. And so when it came to like how people were spending their money and how businesses were spending their money across Q4, it was interesting to see that shift away from those major sale day moments that we've really traditionally relied on in the past and really spread out that budget across the quarter in order to make sure that we were able to sustain business throughout that time frame. So I thought that was really interesting. One thing that we also saw an increase of that I think we're going to continue to see is the use of creators. And so when you think about that thumb stopping content, Kyle, like a lot of what we're seeing is thumb stopping content from creators in partnership with brands. And so when we think about strategies like right now moving forward, that's one that's worth exploring because we do see that it does help decrease some of those costs to kind of counterbalance some of the overall rise in CPMs or CPAs as a result of signal loss. And so those are some of the big trends. I mean, we saw things like a rise in buy now, pay later, which I think we'll continue to see into this year. And then just overall a desire for personalization in ads, which we need those signals to power. So going broad was a really big conversation. Discovery commerce was a big conversation about using this framework of letting people find products and products find people through broader targeting, more thumb-stopping creative, using frictionless shopping where possible, et cetera.
Yeah, Casey, on your side, what was your your takeaway from holiday? Look back a little bit.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of similar challenges, as you guys have both mentioned, with just rising costs. And I think Katherine also just like the extension of what is holiday nowadays, where potentially like Cyber Week felt like there wasn't as much urgency once we got there, as a lot of brands really pulled their promotional cadence up in November. The season felt longer, and there was just, I think, less urgency around that week in particular. Not that there was no obviously uplift, there was, but just kind of a less of like a concentration than we'd seen in previous years. And then just like the post Cyber Week, we didn't really see like CPMs drop off. It felt like people were still quite high for much of December too, sort of that shopping period after that holiday. I think probably largely because competition was still high after that seasonal push and like just needing it to be longer for most audiences. So I think that was definitely something that we're thinking about as we plan for next year. I would say from our perspective, like from like a spend perspective, we kind of did a good job, I think, ramping up and tried to avoid as much volatility in spend and sort of really creating more of a slow ramp over the holiday instead of just trying too hard to push in one direction or another or over the course of several days, which I think we've seen more success with when we haven't sort of had a ton of volatility that way. In terms of creative, we test a lot of things. I think what we've really found success in was like simple is better with promotions, like static images with clear messaging is all you really need when speaking to kind of sales and promotions during that time frame. But we did see much more success in terms of like holiday and gift giving and just general holiday messaging. We were specific to plans, so like decor and things like that. We had much more success with like these short gifts that were a little bit more engaging. So are definitely taking those learnings going into the new year. And I think also just in terms of segmenting and campaign driving, we're really been leaning into first party data, right? As Katherine mentioned, we're losing some of this other insight into sort of with iOS 14, but like have really been leveraging our integration with Klaviyo to use our CRM list to be smarter about who and what audiences we're targeting with our money during these key timeframes.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue, maybe Katherine, into kind of 2022 adapting strategies that Casey mentioned that they're already adapting a lot of that. What are you seeing specifically on your side at Meta that you're seeing maybe even advertisers do or other agencies or partners? Just curious.
Yeah, so I definitely see that, Casey, of leaning into some of that first party data wherever you can. Especially if you have the permission to use it for advertising, we definitely recommend uploading those lists and then using them to create things like lookalikes. Other things that we're recommending alongside that are things like using our Meta Advantage systems. They used to be called things like lookalike expansion or detailed targeting expansion, using automation where possible to expand beyond what we know currently. I think like I'm guilty of this. I like to think I know everything and I really don't. Whereas our auction system knows way, way more about who might convert based off of behaviors than I would if I were guessing based even off of a persona. And so we really are seeing this trend toward taking that custom audience, that first party data, creating lookalikes and using lookalike expansion, going broader in our targeting as much as possible just to get more signal into the platform. I think when we think overall from a performance standpoint, the word signal, if you don't hear me say it at least 15 times in the next 45 minutes, I'd be shocked, because it's obviously what powers our ads ecosystem, but it's also what allows ads to be personalized. And so whether that's getting a rise in on-platform signals, like doing more upper funnel brand awareness tactics to really build out a full funnel strategy, or using on-platform lead forms to collect customer information to create that first-party list like Casey is talking about, or even using things like Conversions API to help capture that signal that gets lost when you're relying on a browser to send information. We found that using Conversions API actually lowers costs on average because of the additional attribution that we're able to do. And so when we think about like, what are the performance strategies that are really underpinning what we're thinking about right now, it's conversions API, it's simplified structures where possible, like combine those signals together, let us use those learnings, and then also measure it. Let's like test it, let's prove it, let's measure it out and see what's working, and not rely on the I tested it, which is like I tried it and it didn't work for a week. And using some things like A/B tests or incrementality to make sure that the study actually shows us what we want to know.
I think on the agency side, we also are looking at other forms. I think we're doing all of those things as well. On top of that, we're looking at other tools that we can use to help sequentially message or come up with even a product strategy. We're using a tool right now at the agency called Aptio that it actually uploads your CRM. It shows what the most like purchased products are, what is the second product they're purchasing, and then you can actually upload those lists directly into the platforms, into Facebook specifically, into your business manager, upload that custom audience, create a lookalike of the second product or of the first product, and actually create a customer segmented strategy. So that's something that we're really leaning into from an agency perspective of that piece, as well as we're partnered with a data integration company now called Morpheo as well, that we're working through creating an LTV and customer acquisition cost metrics, because everyone is so focused on return on ad spend. And with the iOS 14 changes, you did lose a lot of data. So if we can show, for instance, that Facebook is actually bringing in your highest lifetime value of a consumer, or they're bringing in, your lowest customer acquisition costs, which is great, and really tying those data points together. So we're trying to work on the data side as well as what's really helping your overall business versus what's a product-based strategy that your advertising can fall under. And I know it's definitely something that takes time, but it's a starting point of how we're adapting the strategy specifically for our brands moving into 2022. And I hate to say moving in 2022 because it's already May next week, which is crazy. I think that's a great segue though into, I think Casey, you're probably the best one to start this one off, is preparing for holiday. I know that we were chatting before, and you are a little bit different on holiday. You have a lot of different holidays in your business. So I know that you're already holidays already going for you.
Yes, we've got many holidays that we are participating in, Mother's Day especially. So it's a great gift planned. But I would say, I think, like, not to repeat what I said before, but the ramping and sort of preparing for holiday and more of a gradual build, I think, is definitely what was our biggest takeaway from last year and what we're thinking about now. And that means not, just ramping spend in November. It really means like starting in August, making sure you're building the prospecting pools and ensuring that the spend that you have allocated is going to prospecting during the key moments that you want to be building a list, and then transitioning that spend when you get closer to the time frame in which you're obviously the prime holiday timeframe. That's when we shift really the spend from prospecting to retargeting. And so I think we didn't start early enough last year in terms of like building those lists and making sure we were fully stacked for audience pools. And that's something that we're really thinking about really to start in the summer to make sure that we're funded and able to kind of ramp the way we want to going into the fall and winter season. So I think that's super top of mind. I think pinning down our promotional cadence, those things like that, like really getting ahead of that so we can be more strategic with creative and just like spend scheduling out during that holiday season, I think, is key. I also think, another learning we had from last year was, there's things that change in our assortment, but things that are evergreen. And we really leaned into like ads that have historically worked, that have a lot of that built up equity, and actually saw some success with figuring out what worked last year and really leveraging that again year over year. I think there's always an inclination to do new and try something different, and like really figuring out what has worked for us and like leveraging that was actually a huge win for us. And again, just like leaning into these third party or first party lists, I think like the biggest change in our strategy in 2022 is like we kind of always used them with the Klaviyo integration, but really like going one step down and being more granular with the segments and really creating targeted content around that. So retention. These are retention buyers. What should we be telling our retention audience during this time frame versus what we should be telling our prospecting audience versus what we should be telling our retargeting audience, and being really strategic with the messaging in each of these different funnel stages, as well as things like these people bought during Black Friday, Cyber Monday last year, and like making sure that we're contacting them again, knowing that they are price conscious and are active gifters. So really just kind of using these lists and getting one step more granular than we had been previously.
Yeah, I think at the agency, we're doing the same. Pretty obviously, we work together very closely. So, one interesting thing that we're seeing with quite a few other brands in the space is how are we not only creating the awareness, but actually capturing through either SMS, through lifecycle, how are we capturing that data to then even send something like a win back or send something like a future discount, or like getting people excited for holiday, which is crazy that you're already talking about holiday in July, August, September, it's just kind of that buildup. So we're actually moving quite a lot of our, on some clients, not all clients, but some clients moving into some data collection to get those actual customer lists that we can build and market to in the proper way. So that way you can use data that's allowed to be used and follow all the rules and regulations. And really kind of make a full strategy around that and make a product-based strategy, which is our ultimate goal. I don't know, Katherine, what are you seeing on your side? Something probably similar, I would imagine.
Yeah, so I love that y'all are starting early. That's like our biggest recommendation when we think about holiday. And it's always funny because we think, oh, we're starting like holiday in July. And then last year it was June, and now this year it's May. And it's one of those things where, yes, it's getting earlier and earlier. And that's partially just because of the way people are buying. If people are ready to buy their holiday products in October, then we need to make sure that all of our strategies and all of our creative that we've tested and has shown to work is ready to go for when they're ready to like seek out and buy in October. And so the more that you can test things in the summer, typically, we do see lower CPAs and CPMs during the summer. That's when a lot of people tend to pull back in preparation for Q3, Q4. And so that's a really great time to test some strategies that if you're like, we don't know which of our creative, to Casey's point, is really the message that lands. We haven't found that thumb-stopping content that's going to, resonate with our customer, or we don't have a good customer list. We haven't been working to collect these names in a, privacy safe and compliant way. Like use the summer periods to do some of those things, or use that time to make sure that your site is ready to go. Like, is it ready for a mobile buying experience? I love a good Google site speed check. Do it on mobile, do it on desktop. Like, is your site too slow? Because when you're in the summertime, you have time to fix those issues before they actually become performance inhibitors in Q4 when you actually need them to work. And so, yes, it's early, but like, think about what do you want to do right now that can help you be ready for when it comes. I think, thinking about things like, do you want to test out a strategy with creators? That's what we're seeing a lot of people do right now, is figure out, what does our creator strategy look like? We know that it works for people. It does, it can decrease costs by 19% on average, but what does that look like for us? Like, what do we want a creator to do for us? So I think, as much as you can prepare for like what we're recommending and what we're seeing is like the people who prepare their sites, they have all of their signals ready. They have conversions API set up without any issues, are testing out the creative that works. Like, they're the ones that are always ready to hit the ground running and tend to see less of that volatility and better performance overall.
Yeah, I think that's honestly a perfect segue, because you're talking about a lot of testing of like what platform tests. I know you mentioned creators a lot. Do you have, any examples of creator tests that you could like talk us through, or do you have any? I know that you're kind of in the weeds with creators, but I was just curious, like anything you could share that would be like a great test for anybody listening, or a smaller brand.
Yeah.
Or I think that would be super kind of on our last bullet point here.
Yeah, so we actually are running a number of tests right now. I think the test that is the most impactful is really one around reporting. And it actually doesn't have to do with creators, which I know I'm shockingly not talking about. But it's actually, it's a test that you guys may or may not be familiar with. It's called our conversion lift test. And so basically what it is, it's an incrementality test where we have a very small holdout of people who don't see ads. And then we show the rest of your test audience ads, and we see how many more people converted because they saw your ads on Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp or whatever. And then from there, what we've actually been able to do now is calibrate Ads Manager to say like, hey, is Ads Manager underreporting the number of ads that are actually converting for us? And so that's one test that has been really, I think, the most beneficial right now that advertisers are doing to make sure that when they're getting into Q4, that their reporting is as accurate as it can be. We are doing creator tests, seeing like what, again, using that incrementality of business as usual versus business as usual plus creator content. Does that drive incremental conversions for us? Does that increase click-through rates? Like, what does that do for a business? And so the nice thing about conversion lift testing overall is that there actually isn't a budget minimum. It's all about just making sure that we have enough conversions or events, whatever you're looking for, to tell us that the results are statistically significant. AK, we'd be able to repeat it if we did it again. And so those are probably the two big tests that are happening most consistently across the platform that I would recommend running if you can. They do require Conversions API to send back data, so that's just a caveat. But if you're using any partners, it's a really easy way to, quick turn on Shopify or BigCommerce, whatever third party you're using, and then be able to calibrate those results.
Yeah, no, that's great. Casey, on your side, are you starting any, I know that you're kind of Mother's Day head down right now. Are you testing anything that's different like year over year, or are you testing anything that's different from a holiday test that you're saying, hey, it's a theory that we want to test out? Are you trying new content? Is there anything on your side that you're really adapting, at the Sill?
Yeah, I think we're definitely testing a lot into some of these audiences. I've spoken about a lot at this point, but really like testing like landing pages and creative specifically around these different groups of customers. So we've done a lot of landing page tests even last year, but continued this year to really make sure we're sending people to the right places. And what we found actually is like our prospecting audience really converts better on a very different page than our retention audiences do, and really figuring out the nuances between those groups has been a big focus for us, as well as creative. So we're currently doing a big creative overhaul to really speak very specifically to the different first-party customer segments that we are kind of using, and really making sure that what we're putting out for the prospecting audience is very relevant and speaks to our value props, whereas our retention audience is getting a lot more of our plant care resources, loyalty, recruitment, 30-day guarantee reminders, things that are just more relevant to people who know about us and are really, will help contribute to their experience with us as a current customer. So we're doing a ton of creative testing around that, which we're hoping to kind of, as Katherine mentioned, learn now and be able to leverage during the holiday season. So that's been a big focus for us. And also, I think retention has been a big place where we're testing. So obviously we use Facebook for a lot of prospecting. It's a great way to get new audiences, but I think just with rising costs, really looking at like, how do we leverage the platform to sort of better engage our current customers, and have done a lot of segmentation and slicing on like, based on what we know about our customer frequency, and like, do they come in 30 days or 90 days or 180 days, and really doing a lot of testing and spending against different breakouts of our retention audience to see where is the most valuable time to hit them with an ad, and with what content. So that's been a very big focus for us this year as well. Also to sort of learn this going into holiday, so we can take some of those learnings there.
Yeah, and I think at Hawke, we're doing very similar pieces, and we're looking at third-party tools specifically to help us enhance that for our clients. So how can we segment lists, and how can we create those lookalikes, kind of like I mentioned with that tool Appdio that we're using as an agency now to really just have that data at our hands. It does take a lot of manual data of digging through GA, upgrading to GA4, digging through these email lists, so if you can have a tool that takes this time off of you and allows you to actually implement the strategy, The great part about Hawke is we can say, hey, if we know product A versus product B, we can actually send them an email. We can make that email cohesive with their ads that we're showing them on Facebook and Instagram. We can get data really, really quickly, which is really, really nice. So that's really what we're doing from a perspective of really diving in the data, understanding the attribution piece, really diving in on like where the lifetime value and what the lifetime value of a consumer is, like what and where we're actually seeing a lower customer acquisition cost, not focusing as much on return on ad spend because we want to look at the holistic brand overall. So that's really our biggest piece moving into 2022 and holiday is how do we increase that going into holiday, and then how do we make that repeat purchaser come through with these platforms, which is amazing. I think that that's probably a great place to, we can just, I think that was great from all of us. I do truly appreciate Katherine and Casey taking their time today. I did want to say, answer any questions if we had any questions in the chat. Happy to answer any questions. But I don't know if Katherine or Casey, if you had anything that you wanted to add on your side.
I don't think so. I think like you mentioned, happy to answer any questions if there's specific things any of the audience members want to dig into more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just awesome to hear Casey and Kyle, what you guys are working on. I love, Kyle, that y'all are doing more of, MMM, mixed media modeling, understanding lifetime value. I think, the more that you can understand impact, the better. So any chance to do it, I'm in full support. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, I think it's, the best way to make your digital strategy kind of
Totally.
Yeah. Well, perfect. Well, I guess thank you ladies so much for your time today. It was great to chat. And I know that we all talk all the time. So I love seeing your faces. This is fun. We're not talking about so much work. We're talking about strategy and ideas. So this is great. Thank you so much. And everyone, I hope you guys all have a great day. Cool. Thanks, everybody.